go ahead and get started. We're about 10 after. Sounds like Victor's not going to make it, unfortunately, but we got 6 of the 7, so thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good. I know, yeah. 10 o'clock is we're usually in the PJ still, right? I know, this is good. I wanted to explain a little bit about the PAC and what happened there. So the PAC is no longer in existence. These forums, I think, were so valuable that I think we, just as a community, should continue to do them. The reason I had to shut down the PAC is twofold. Marilyn Portwood, one of the co-founders of the PAC, and she's actually the president on the reporting mechanism of the state, passed away a month and a half, 2 months ago. Also my job as the regional director of the GIA. So I'm the federal trustee to the tribe, and I'm not able to raise money for the campaign of the tribe. That being said, I'm still a citizen of the tribe and I can still be engaged on my personal time. So hosting forums is still okay. I'd rather not do them all. I'm pretty busy with my new job, and so I'm going to be willing to backfill as a host of these forums from time to time. But I'm really looking for others to step up and host them. Just because I cannot take 3 weekends out of my summer anymore, because I have to travel quite a bit around the Northwest to tribes. Next week I'm headed to London, for example, on Sunday. So I did want to say that we can still do a Portland forum, and I've got a place, Naya has volunteered to give us a space there for Saturday. So I'd be interested to know if the candidates can make it. We do it on Saturday again.
Next Saturday?
Next Saturday. So it'd be at Naya, up near the airport. And so if we can make that happen, I think we as a community, the Portland folks would be ecstatic. We have usually a very good turnout in Portland. We have 30 or 40 people usually, so it'd be a great opportunity for you all to get out in front of folks.
I'll be able to make it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll start at late, so because you have to drive 2 hours, so we'll start at 11. Give you a couple hours to get there. But I will find somebody else to host, because there's so many participants there. I'll find somebody in the audience to host that one. But yeah, that's the long and short of the PACs. The PAC no longer exists, so we won't be collecting money. One of the downfalls of that is we don't have water or food, and we have to we pay for these venues out of our pocket. So Chris has stepped up this time and covered the cost this year of St. Michael's. We're just going to have to find other venues that are free, which will, go to libraries or whatever we can find to do this in the future. So any questions at all about the PAC or the forum? I know everyone here is experienced and knows this is going to be our 11th year of doing these forums, so it's really great. So everybody knows the rules. By being here, you're consenting to being on camera, and we're going to post it on the web for the 5,000 tribal members, the 300 voting members to get on there and take a look. There's no standard questions at all. I'm going to just turn it over to the audience here. I've got a few questions myself as a citizen. And you all know I'm just going to be here trying to manage time. I'm going to work hard to try to give everybody equal amount of airtime. If you're going a little long on the 2 minutes that we allocate, I'm going to tap this. Yeah, that'll be a clue. And we'll go from there. Any questions before we launch in? Seeing none from the audience. Any questions from the candidates? You guys all know this as well? Great. Who would like to go first and ask the first question? And if not, I'm happy to. Anybody from the audience?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
No. Michael's going to take some time. Anybody else? Okay. Let me ask the first question then here. So, there's been a lot of press and on social media about the Willamette Falls. And one of the challenges of the Willamette Falls is the...
Sorry, I'm not really hearing you.
Oh, you're not hearing me? Okay, let me turn it up a bit then, Jack. Sorry. I do have a low voice. And is that better now?
I think you might have to.
You want to switch and sit closer? Okay, that's a good idea.
Take this hat. You're not going to wear it?
And all the noise is going downward too, so I apologize, Jack. So one of the things that I'm following as a city, as a tribal member of Portland is Willamette Falls and what's going on there. And it's a really dynamic, multi-variable issue there, right? So Willamette Falls has historical ties for a lot of different tribes, but in particular we have very special ties to that area. So the fishing platform, you all probably saw the op-ed that we had from the 3 traffic chairs about this fishing platform. Now the Blue Heron paper mill. So I'm curious what you as a candidate would like to see done there. What is the purpose of our involvement? And then what do you think our relationship with other regional tribes that have historic ties to that area too should be? So first part of the question is, what is your vision for that area, for Willamette Falls and that area, including the Blue Heron, but more importantly just the Willamette Falls area itself? So what's your vision for that? And 2, what is the relationship with tribes that have historical ties to that area too? Randy, any question?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can flip it on, please.
Hello? Okay, I guess listening to your question, I really feel it's an unfair question because we haven't been involved into what we want to see. I mean, that would be more of Jack, Kathleen, and Denise's thing. So how would we even be able to answer that question?
And I'm not asking specifically about the Blue Heron paper mill. That's a part of it. What I'm asking is about the Willamette Falls in general. What would be your vision of the Willamette Falls in general for this tribe?
Okay.
So who wants to go first? You can talk about the Blue Paper Hill if you want, Blue Heron paper mill or not. I mean, let's go ahead and go first.
You have 3 parts to that? You only got 3 1 and 2. I thought you said you had 3.
No, sorry, I just had the 2. So what's your vision for Willamette Falls, and then what's the relationship with other tribes there in that vision, in that
Make
future?
sure I just want to make sure.
Okay. So take a moment if you want to think about it, and let me see if anybody wants to go first. You want to go first, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, the vision, I think we're actually getting to the vision. And of course, I did a lot of work there in the testimony and everything to get our ceremonial fishing there. And of course, we've done our eeling. And for anybody that was there, and I don't know who all was there. John was there, Tanya was there, me, Ed Pearsall. I don't remember who else was there. But it was very... 3 years ago when we went up there and took the first fish after we'd got the license from the state, it was very moving, very emotional. It was like you could see our ancestors on the rocks actually fishing. And so everybody I think understands that connection. Of course we've been eeling there since restoration, almost restoration I guess. So I think we've established that piece of it, and I think we keep enhancing it. To me, it was recovering a piece of sovereignty, which is a great thing for any tribe out there today, whether it be big or whether it be small. Recovering sovereignty is something a council or leadership should always put as one of your main goals. As far as where we go today and where we go, I got a lot of concerns, and like you said, we can do a little bit. I got concerns that if we go up there, and people need to remember, the state of Oregon holds the licensing for that fishing. And if we go up there, and it could happen, it might not happen, who knows. But if we start fighting over fishing up there and whatever, the state can very well say, well, nobody's going to fish there. I mean, they got that kind of power to say, nobody's going to fish. And then we go backwards. So I think it's a very, very delicate issue with all the tribes that are involved. I don't know how many people really realize that, Yakima, people can say, well, they're a Washington tribe, but they're still involved there. I think Umatilla, Warm Springs, I think even the Nez Perce has got probably part of it. So I got a lot of concerns for how that would roll out. And then plus, if you find an artifact or something, of course, we're going to say it's ours because it's in our treaty grounds. I totally support and have testified and fought for protecting our treaties. But realistically, the other tribes can come in and say, no, that's ours, and you end up in court, and you end up with more bad blood between the tribes. So I got a lot of concerns when you got that many tribes involved in one spot for us just to be able to say it's ours. Other than it is our treaty, and it's in our treaty grounds, but we should try and keep good relationships. I mean, we all went through the casino deal. We know what come out of that, a lot of bad feelings and stuff. But this is, like I said the other night, it's like throwing gas on the fire.
Who'd like to go next? Kathleen, looks like you
Sure.
want to go next?
Sure, well, thanks for the question. This is,
Sorry, can you flip that on? Sorry.
Thanks for the question. So I think the role of Willamette Falls for Grand Ronde people is that it is our ceded lands. Unquestionably, the Treaty of 1855 ceded the Willamette Valley, including the falls, and we know that people, our chiefs from the Koliwala village and other villages nearby were removed from there to Grand Ronde. And we also know that in the early days of the reservation, when those days were very hard and people were starving, our people went from Grand Ronde back to the falls to get fish, to feed the people, to keep our tribal members here in Grand Ronde alive. And so our relationship with the falls, despite our removal, has been one of subsistence, it has been one of survival. And I see that relationship being restored today. When we go every spring, and in the ways of our ancestors, we give thanks for the salmon returning, and we do it as a community, and we do it in that place, on that river. We're restoring our relationship with that place. And when I see, the young kids doing that, returning the bones of the salmon to the river, I feel very proud of Grand Ronde and what we're doing there. My vision for continuing to restore our role at the falls involves seeing more and more of our fishermen fishing from our platform. Dip netting, we know that our little kids already, our little preschoolers and Lulus, they tell us with the pictures that they make and give us that they see themselves fishing there. And to me, that points out the future and where we're going. It's very sad to us, the reality that there are other tribes who oppose our fishing there. And it is true that other tribes came to Willamette Falls to fish. That's historically documented. But it's also historically documented, and we know from our own family stories, which are the most important source of our knowledge, that was a host-guest relationship. And when other tribes came to the falls to fish, there was a tribute that had to be paid in terms of fish caught or in other ways. And so we maintain that relationship. We have wished that the other tribes would come and talk to us about fishing there. We developed the process of getting the state acknowledged rights to fish at the falls as a partnership with the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon isn't going anywhere. So we worked with them for years to develop that. And just to let everybody know, the state is completely unmoved in its position of strong support for our fishing there. They have not wavered in the slightest, despite the complaints of the other tribes. I think it's really sad, too, that it's really only tribes. No Oregon City people have disagreed, no fishing groups have disagreed, it's just some other tribes. But the state is stalwart in their support, and so we're going to continue, and we're going to go forward. My vision is that I hope we continue to develop that relationship, and we redevelop what a modern village, what a modern Grand Ronde village should be near Willamette Falls. And I think we're going to have great success with that. We know that there's millions of dollars going into the redevelopment of that area. We hope it's a new small pearl district one of these days. And we know how to do good work, and we know how to do tourism and business, and we know we're going to have a lot of investors who have already committed millions of dollars to the project. So it's a really exciting time.
You would, Jeff.
Well, Willamette Falls, first of all, is probably one of 3 or 4 very sacred sites and spiritual sites for this tribe. I'm probably the council person that has been up there and actually taken part in the fishing and eel gathering the most in modern history. The thing about this is even if we buy this property, we have no control over the falls. Falls is totally separate and down the river below the falls. And for modern times, what I hope is we can keep entering into a government consultation process with the state of Oregon, PGE, and gain other access to the falls. As far as the property that we made an offer on, and actually I've been thinking of moving forward with a purchase, I personally feel that the Willamette Falls locks is a better option for us. I think we could turn that into some really good fish passage, and that's what's missing with our watersheds in the Willamette Valley, is good fish passage. I know that the eels don't pass through the OFW passages as well, but and there is a encampment that used to be on the other side where the locks is. So there's lots of options, but you know, for looking into the future, I think it all stems on the government relationship we got with those partners. The other tribes, you know, they came here and they obviously through oral history know that they had to offer up a bounty for whatever they took from the falls. And I think in today's world, you know, we got to be kind of like the same area we are now. We have to partner with them and try and reestablish these runs, fish and eels and other things that we gathered there. But it's all through negotiations with them, the state, and OFW, you know, because they're the ones that control the real falls, where the sacred portion of the falls is.
Thank you, Jack.
Good morning. I think what we're doing is we're looking at two different questions. The first thing is what about the falls and our cultural ties to those? And I absolutely agree with Kathleen Denise and some of the others about our cultural ties. The strength that we have there, the presence that we have, the history that we have. And that's one aspect of it. But even as Jack said, we don't own the falls. We'll never own the falls. We'll own property around the falls if that's what's going to happen. So the first thing we do is we establish where we want to be culturally, okay, with the falls and the tribe. The second part of that is what do we want to do economically to the area around the falls to try to be able to make it a better place? Is there a way of being able to develop the properties in a true partnership? I'm not talking about the partners, that's a government entity. I'm talking about partners such as Connie Balmer, some of the others that are throwing millions of dollars into this process. How do we work with them? How do we able to do that? So when we start talking about the falls, we need to take a look at two things. One, how do we culturally and historically establish our right through plaques, platforms, and that type of thing to be able to show the people that are coming to the falls, okay, about our presence there. And the second thing is, what are we going to do with the development and how that's going to interact? That's two separate things. So one of the things that I think that we need to be able to do is to go to the individuals that want to develop the old Blue Heron property and say, okay, what are our roles and what are our rights? How are we going to be able to intertwine? What is your return on investment going to be? How much are you willing to be able to contribute? Now, those questions haven't been answered yet, but I think that they will be. So, I think that we should proceed forward, but we should proceed forward cautiously, establishing two separate venues: culture, history, economic development, and investment.
First off, I'd like to thank everybody that came today for coming and giving us a chance to speak, and also like to thank.
I think you might have turned it off.
It's on? Just closer? Okay, sorry. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming today, give us a chance to speak and listen to us, and thank all the candidates here for coming, and Brian and Chris for putting this on. Vision for the falls, I think, is kind of a multi-sided question, as you have now an economic development part of it with the recent or soon-to-be purchase of the land, and the cultural side of it. And I think for me that goes into relationships with other tribes, because this has been a very sacred site to not only us, as has been mentioned here before, but to other tribes. And I would like to see us to continue that, because there's been a lot of infighting, as stated before, again, with other tribes that I don't think is necessary. I think we could work with those tribes and trade as we have in the past, because I think it's benefited all tribes in the past and will benefit us in the future. The economic side of things, while I had some concerns about this purchase, I hope it does turn out to be every bit as great as some people think. One thing that I would like to see in that is, because I know there will be like historical sides to it and about our cultures. One thing that I would like to see not happen is, because our fishing to us is sacred, that when that development happens, that doesn't turn into a show a bit of, you know, watch the Indians fish. That's just one concern I have that I'd like to see not come to fruition. Thank you.
Denise.
Good morning, and yes, once again, thank you all for coming. I know it's not what probably everybody wants to do on their Saturday morning off on a beautiful day, but I appreciate it, and thank you all that show up. Thanks, Chris and Brian, for putting this together. So, the question about the relationship, and for me, I have been involved. I'm actually on the tribal committee for the Riverwalk Legacy Project. So I have participated in meetings with the other tribes in the development of that, and with the folks that are putting that together and designing that. They have put in interpretive centers and historical markers along the walkway is the plan. So the tribes have been working together, at least on that piece of it. I do believe that for us as tribal members of Grand Ronde, the participation in the cultural practice of our ancestors is just unbelievable. I've been up there, I've seen the guys up there fishing off the rocks, I've seen them up there fishing off the platform. Saw them putting that platform together and the work that we had to go through to get it, and I think all of us on council that participated in that, it felt as if we were warriors out there on the river to protect our people, is what it felt like when that process was going forward. And it's a time and a feeling that I'm very proud of, and it was a very good feeling, and I want to be able to embrace that, and that we continue and work with our tribes and have relationships with them. I've had a few folks say, you know, from other tribes, hey, can I fish off your platform? And I'm like, well, for one, you got to get certified in the swift water, you know, rescue keys, and there's some things that go along with that. But I've even talked to the Select Tribal Council, because they could actually apply for the same permit that we have, and they have not done that. But they actually have very similar rights to what we have as far as applying for a platform and doing their fishing there. So I've talked to a couple of the council members there. I think, you know, there's always going to be a few battles and disagreements, but really coming together and trying to have a mutual understanding between what we're doing and preserving our cultural practices and where those locations are. It's just a matter of working together. You know, I know Brian and I have been working on the land acknowledgement with many folks throughout the Portland Metro and Vancouver area, and that's just all a part of the work that we do to create good relationships and working together with our other tribes. I will say I kind of disagree that by owning that property, we won't have any control over the falls. We will have control over the access and the viewing of the falls by us being that property owner. So we do have, that does give us, you know, it does give us some control, or I don't want to say control, but ownership on how that's developed and what occurs in that process. So I'm very excited about that, because that location is a scenic destination for Oregon. I mean, people know that falls all over the country, and if we have the ability to provide visitors who come to Oregon or local people to have a view of that falls that they've never had, or, you know, in some of our tribes to have better access, I think that's good. And I'm very proud of being able to have some say in that situation. The vision there, there's a lot of visions there, because people have been working on this project for like 5 years. Some of the reasons that those visions haven't come forward or been enacted as of yet is because of the difficulties with the previous private owner. So But everybody that's been involved and what that vision might be, have been steadily working forward, even though there's been some holdups with the current private owner. So it could be anywhere from, somebody talked about a national park. If that's what it ends up being, that's great too. If it ends up being a, Pearl District, like Kathleen said, that's good too. So, thank you.
Who has water rights?
Who has the water rights?
The water rights upstream and downstream from the falls. Who owns the water? No, you can have water, people upstream deleting water where there won't be no falls. Do those people have rights over the people, or over the people who have right downstream? You know what I mean by that? Can we control the flow of water?
No.
No?
Yeah, so there's the Oregon Water Master, so there's a state agency that controls water right allocation across the west.
Like if we have a 100-year-old, a 500-year-old storm and it floods everything, who's got control over that?
Well,
is that on us?
No, so that's the Detroit Dam, the big Little Cliff Dam, the 3 dams on the Sandy Dam up in Detroit, those are flood control dams, so those are there to try to control it. So it's actually the federal government, my old employer, Bonneville Power Administration, and the Army Corps of Engineers that's responsible for control.
Will there be dams shut down because of it, and upstream?
No, because you have too many communities that live.
That need it.
Yeah, they need that. They need that flood protection. So.
And it won't affect the fish flow or the.
Oh, it does. Oh, it does. It affects it.
Well, we have no control over that.
No, the federal government does.
Oh, good thing Jazinki's gone, right? Isn't he? The guy from the Department of Interior, isn't he gone? The secretary?
No comment.
I know. That's why I asked.
Any other questions at all?
Yes, I have 3 children. One of them's on the roll, 2 of them are not. What is your position on getting rid of the 99 Amendment?
Okay. So, split families. What are you all going to do about it? All right, let's go to Jack.
I'm a firm believer that the membership is fully responsible for enrollment. What my responsibility is trying to develop language, come together with the other 8 members of tribal council, develop language that the membership can accept and vote on. But it's their decision on any person that's enrolled in this. We're a self-governed, self-determining tribe. And what that means is the membership decides who is eligible for membership. So I support language that helps you, but if only it's voted on and approved by the membership.
Thanks, Jack. I'd like to go next. All right, Boone, sorry.
So I agree with Jack on that one, that, the 99 Amendment was voted on by the membership. Anything that overturns that should be voted on by the membership. I firmly believe that. While I firmly believe that there's definitely people out there that should be members, I would like to see different parts of the 99 Amendment overturned. I think this last one came very close at 60%. I think it missed by about 3%. I would have liked to have seen us put that on hold, because I think that would have passed without wherever the issue lied with the extra wording on when the ballots went out, the mistake that was made there. I think that would have had a good chance to pass. What I would like to have seen added to that, if that's ever pushed forward again, is, for me, is born after date, because I think a lot of the people that were left out because of the 1999 Amendment were mostly afterwards. So whether it was a born after date or something to that effect on it, I would personally support what was put out last time with born after date on it. But just the main thing is whether you consider it unfortunate or not, that's going to have to be on the membership to change, because it was the membership that voted to put that in place to begin with. Thank you.
Would you like to go next, Denise?
Yeah, we just, we had the split families constitutional amendment that we tried to move forward. It did only lose by 3%. I think it actually came out to that was actually 40-some votes that it missed it by. That's probably one of the closest amendments that we've ever came to in changing. Some of the concerns I have, there's always the talk about the language, and it appears that in my time of being on council and being here at the tribe, that there's always that question, well, that language doesn't work, that language doesn't work, no, this language doesn't work. So there's always going to be to where somebody thinks that the language is not right. I know people that are here today even, and some on council, we had a pretty united front on that amendment. Some people changed their mind. We had people in our community that were encouraging people to vote against it. And that doesn't help the situation on correcting that 1999 amendment. The 1999 amendment, I've talked to council members. I think, Ren, you were on council when that went forward. It was a united front at that time on that amendment, and it passed. Even though there was lots of conversations about they didn't like the language, and they knew that it was going to create problems, but they went ahead and supported it, moved it forward, and encouraged all voters to vote for it. So I'm not sure how or when we are going to be able to really make these corrections for the right reasons for all the membership. Because it just seems that every time there's somebody out there that's got to say something and not like the language, regardless of what it does to any one of our families. So I'm supportive. I actually wanted to put the other revote, I wanted to put it out for a revote right after it failed because of the language issue, but that didn't happen either, so thank you.
Denise, would like to go next? Right down here, Kathleen, please.
So Robbie, I think your question to us was, as candidates, what would we do to help fix our split family problem? And so what I've done in the last several years is I supported moving forward. We first put out an advisory vote to membership. 70% of the people responding to that vote said that they wanted to vote on a split family grandfather clause type amendment to the Constitution. So I supported putting that out to a vote of the membership, as did the rest of the tribal council at that time. And then I actively supported what was essentially the grandfather clause, the sibling grandfather clause. And I did everything I could to educate our members about it and what it would do and how it would help our families who have brothers and sisters, the exact same parents, the exact same enrollment facts. But we say to 2 or 3 of those children, you're tribal members, and we say to 1, you're not. And unfortunately, as other folks have mentioned, we missed by a narrow margin. We got 62.5% in favor, and I think Denise was right, I think it's about 40-some votes that didn't get that to pass. The problem we have in this community is we also have some folks who just really don't want that fix to happen, and they were very vocal about that. And they said, no, we don't want this. And the phrase you so often hear is the floodgates. It's going to open the floodgates. We are going to have hundreds of tribal members enrolling. And you also hear, and we heard this, and then that means your per capita is going to go down. Well, we have absolutely no reason to believe that hundreds of new tribal members will be created by fixing our split sibling problem. We can't know for sure because we don't know the entire universe, but we have no reason to believe there will be hundreds of people. And so we just really have to talk about that for what it is. And we have to turn out our voters. When you look at that list, we had lots of people who registered for that election, and then they didn't vote. We were approximately 40 votes off from passing a constitutional election. So while I'm very disappointed it didn't pass, we also got closer than we've gotten in a long time. And that also means that a significant majority of our tribal members want this to happen. Now, the other thing that we've been doing is we straightened out what had become an unapproved practice of keeping some of our tribal members off the restoration roll. We have a process to correct the restoration roll. And there were practices that were never approved by tribal council that were being implemented that kept our tribal members off the restoration roll who belong on that restoration roll. They have the same types of facts, enrollment facts, blood quantum, parents, that the people on the original restoration roll have. So what we said is you need to apply the same sorts of standards that were applied to the original restoration roll to corrections to the restoration roll. And for some families, that is helped. In our last meeting, we had some tribal members who were able to re-enroll because their ancestors were able to be on the restoration roll. Now again, these are members of our families. These aren't people from somewhere else. They're all tribal members, and they're our families. So where we can find that there's these procedural problems getting in the way, we need to address them directly, and where we can, we need to allow our tribal members to rejoin our community.
Luke?
Thank you. Well, first off, I'm very, very supportive of the getting families back on the roll, the split family issue. And I wish that we could have been able to right the one problem. Most of our tribal members became educated to split families after the vote. That's when the discussion took place. It wasn't before the vote. It wasn't when we had an opportunity to be able to try to talk this through. It was after the vote. Then they started talking about the wording. Then they started talking about this. And then they started talking about that. We had an excellent opportunity to be able to get back in and fight for this at that point in time by writing the wording necessary to be able to make it. Pete has some good ideas, and I appreciate the fact that maybe it's after this date. Maybe that's a good way to be able to do it. The issue is, and I'm writing something for my blog, it'll probably go out next week. Blood is thicker than family. Where tribal members can't get on. I was talking to Mike Wilson at the powwow grounds last night. He was so excited and so blessed that his son could be on the roll after all of those years. I think that we need to be able to get it rewritten, the wording right. I think simplicity is extremely important. The more complex something is, the more difficult it is to be able to understand it. Make it simple and get the vote back out there and do it again before the people forget. I think that's what needs to happen. I think people such as yourself need to have their children on the roll as a family. We're letting this blood thing get in the way of a lot of things. And one of the things that we really need to do is we need to take a look at this, because ultimately our descendants and their descendancy is going to rely on what we put on paper.
Thanks, Luke. Randy, do you want to speak to this?
Well, personally, I'm kind of Jack. I always have believed in the membership should set the criteria for the enrollment piece. But I also see, being off council now for 2 years, the frustrations that some people feel out there with this whole enrollment issue. And I hear it a lot from the membership and people. Our leadership can either agree or disagree. I really don't care. People are tired of hearing about enrollment. It's been something that's been on the table for probably the last 3 or 4 years now. The last year I was there, certainly. Is it an important issue? Yeah, it's the backbone of the tribe, but should it possess the whole criteria of everything that we are doing as a tribe? And I feel that things are not getting addressed, and I'll use our veterans as a perfect example of that. The legislation 2 years ago was passed to allow us to have our own tribal service officer. But yet the job just now got open for interviews and stuff. So, and I know the council said maybe potentially building a building, but it seems like we're letting other things go while everybody's giving their opinion on enrollment. And I know people think that everybody in our family is enrolled. They're certainly not. I got nieces and nephews that are not enrolled, and I got great grandkids that are enrolled. So, but I think in the 99 Amendment, I truly believe this, and I believe it to this day. If you're going to be enrolled, you need to have the 1/16 Grand Ronde blood. I truly believe that. All the other stuff, I kind of took a different look at, and You know, whatever the people want to say, whatever the people want to vote. You know, I didn't agree on the 5-year relinquishment piece, but the membership voted in. And realistic as a tribal leader, you ain't up there to run your own criteria. You're up there to do what the membership tells you. If I'd have been on council in this last amendment and would have passed, it'd have been my job to implement it and make it function the best way I could for this tribe. It ain't my job to go in there and run my own independent opinion on stuff. So I believe a lot in the tribe. I believe a lot of our sovereignty was lost when you got a court that says you enroll these people. I think a lot of our sovereignty was lost when you got our leadership creating ordinance to enroll people. I don't believe in either one of them. I believe that attacks our sovereignty. I believe it should be in the hands of the people, and it should always be in the hands of the people. And there will be people who can't be enrolled, and there's people who can be enrolled. And that's the way it should be, and that is the way it is for a lot of tribes. So that's my belief. People can agree or disagree, but we can't enroll the world. That's just the way it is.
Thanks, Moran. So I have a question online from Fred McGee. Is it all right if I go to this first, Angie, and then we'll go to you next? Okay. So Fred asks, as a tribal council person, what would you do to ensure that all tribal employees are treated in a fair, unbiased manner and with the honor and respect we all deserve without fear of retaliation? So I think this is a workplace culture question about working for the tribe. So as a tribal council person, what would you do to ensure that all tribal employees are treated in a fair, unbiased manner with the honor and respect we all deserve without fear of retaliation? Ren, you want to go first?
Yeah. I'll go first because this is a simple one for me. I think the first thing that everybody has to agree on and understand is when my dad told me, and I did a lot from what my dad told me, and he always told me that basically when you get on council, it's just that you got more votes than somebody else on one given day. You are no different than anybody else. You are no more powerful than anybody else. You are just somebody who got more votes, and you'll be there for 3 years. What I've seen in my time on council is you get independent council people thinking they got power and they think they got authority, but realistically they don't. But the employees and some of our boards and committees feel that these independent council can go and tell people what to do. Well, the rule is, realistically, you can't do that. Unless you got a paper that's got 5 councilmen signed, you are no more than just a tribal member who sits on this leadership. And that's the way you keep from people attacking our employees, change it. If you change direction of a department, that is wrong as one person. If you change the direction of a department as 5, then that is what your role is as a tribal leader. But it's hard to get people to understand that. They fear the position, they fear council. And the idea has to be embedded in our employees. They can't do anything as an independent. And realistically, they should be doing everything through a general manager, not independently.
You call that cronyism? Cronyism, in a way.
Yeah. Boone was going to go ahead. Yeah.
I would like to agree with everything that Ren just said. You can be humbled every 3 years. If elected in 3 years, you can be humbled, because they don't like the way you're doing your job. I think that's why we have a general manager. I think that's why we have an HR department. I've made it very clear to my family that, don't come to me with an issue. That's what HR is for. I'm not in place to decide how, your employment is continued or not. It will be in my letter in the smoke signals that I do hear from a lot of people that they do fear speaking up. They'll come to me with, will you ask this for me? Will you ask that for me? And while I say, I'll voice my own opinions, unfortunately not yours, because I believe that that's their place to do. They just say that they're not willing to out of fear of retribution, and that will never be something that anybody would ever fear from me. I fully wholehearted want memberships to ask questions. I want membership to feel they can come to me and without any fear. It's just, again, that's what we have in the HR department. That's not that wouldn't be my place as a council member. that won't come from me. Thank you.
Who'd like to go next? Denise?
Well, I have to, it's an interesting question. I think it was Fred that asked that? Yeah. And thank you for that question. I, as somebody who began working for the tribe as an employee in 2002, and one of the reasons that I ran for council is because I saw all those concerns that people are addressing, and they are very real, and they are very much out there. And for someone to say that they don't subject influence over people in positions and who those individuals are and how the outcomes come out is not true. And one of the things, and really one of my purposes for working and being on tribal council was to create a fair, ethical organization for all of our people that work here, and for them to be able to do the jobs like they were educated and knowledgeable in. That is not the situation always. It is very true that council cannot interfere in those situations. It's up to us to provide an organizational structure where we have fairness and equality for everyone, but we can't interfere in the day-to-day, and it's hard because there are times of concern, and people write to us and address their concerns to us, but as a council person, you do have to rely on your executive team to take action or to provide a solution to whatever the issue might be. But I will say it does happen, and it has happened over the years, and I strive very hard to someday, and I think we've made great improvements over the last few years. We still have a lot of work to do in that area, but my goal is to make things fair and equality for all.
Let's go to Luke.
You know, Pete and I have an excellent opportunity because I think Pete's still an employee of the casino, and I was an employee of the tribe and the casino for 19 years. And we faced that. We tried to be able to establish through HR development different processes to be able to ensure that not just tribal members, but that any employee has a fair and equitable way to be able to express their concerns. If we as tribal council members begin to interfere in the processes that are created, then we lose an opportunity for the system to be able to work. I've had a lot of tribal council members come to me as a past manager at the tribe, not only in EBS, but in maintenance, okay, saying, well, we're not being treated fairly, we're not being able to do this. And I would say, put your concerns down on a piece of paper. Qualify who is creating the problem for you and what's taking place. Bring it to me, we'll talk about it, and then we'll go to HR. We'll establish a process through HR. I don't believe the tribal council should be involved in the operations of the casino or in the operations of the tribal facilities or other departments. We have programs in place. What happens is when we break those programs down, or we break the walls down to the programs, then chaos ensues, and that's when feelings get hurt and people get upset. I think we've got a good system in place. I've been a part of that system. Ron Ryback has been a great director for me, and he was a great boss when he was my manager. He had an open door policy. We could come to him, we could talk to him, we could write it out. And he would take the opportunity to be able to express where we needed to be able to go through the HR process. Does it happen all the time? No, there are some managers and some supervisors that use their position as tribal council members, or tribal members, okay, in their position of authority to try to be able to hold people back from what needs to be done. After 19 years, I came to the casino in 1999, after 19 years of seeing a process, not only as an employee, a line employee, but also as a manager and a director of the board, I've seen the system break down. And the system breaks down because we allow it to. We don't believe in the systems that we've created. So one of the things that we need to do as tribal council members and as supervisors, managers, and directors is go back to the process that exists and educate our tribal members as to how they can try to be able to get their problems resolved.
Thanks very much for sending the question in. I think it's one that's on a lot of tribal members' minds, and certainly those that have are now or ever been employees. So I too, in the past, have seen both favoritism and targeting of tribal member employees. And it's very, very disturbing. I mean, I know that as a young person, I was so thrilled to get to come back and work for my tribe. I believe most tribal members feel that way. And in the past, we've had some pretty serious problems with interference in proper HR processes. Political interference, thinking, well, this person, we should try to move them out. This person, they can't be disciplined. And I think we have a tribal council that is absolutely committed to putting that behind us. And we're working very hard to do so. One of the things we've done is we have an anonymous report it system, both at the casino and at the tribe. Some folks wanted to get away from that and get rid of it. I definitely supported keeping it, and in fact, what we have it now doing is that those reports go directly to the independent auditor on the tribal side. They go, I believe, to the gaming commission, but then are sometimes given to HR if it's an HR matter on the casino side. That's one way in which, if an employee is afraid of retaliation, they can get that message to the independent auditor in the case of the tribe, who answers directly to tribal council. And that person will look into, does this question have merit? Is there a real issue here or not? Now, some people do have grudges or their feelings have been hurt, but in some cases there might be a very real issue that needs to be referred to HR. We also have a new HR director who is a tribal member and who has incredible experience working for many companies and tribes across the United States, who I think is going to bring, the vision of a tribal member to our HR processes. And in addition, we have TARA, and we have the Tribal Employment Rights Ordinance. So again, if a tribal member feels they've been treated unfair in an HR matter, they really do have another body that they can appeal to if they really feel that they can demonstrate they've been treated unfairly. We're going to be looking for a new TARA director. That TARA director then can bring that issue forward. So what we have created and what we are strongly supporting now is there are multiple paths that tribal members have to bring their issue forward and ask that it be addressed. And what we have to do is we also have to make sure that the message we're sending to all those folks, whether it's the auditor or HR or TARA, is that all tribal members must be treated fairly, and they must be treated the same. All families must be treated fairly and treated the same. And then we need to back that up. There have been some efforts in the past to get rid of Report It or not have it on the tribal side or not have it go to the auditor. And, I've opposed any efforts to get rid of it or to have that report go to anyone but the independent auditor, because I think our tribal employees have to know that their issue will be taken seriously and will be investigated, based on the facts brought forward. And I think having it given to that independent auditor ensures that that's going to happen, because she does not have a role in their departments. And so I will stand strong for those protections. Thank you.
Thank you. I think first I have to say that I don't do the hiring and fire. I rely on what I consider very, very dedicated and educated experts. And in the HR field, I think that it just recently we've upgraded that position to a tribal member that is very well scaled in that arena. But as far as being discriminated against and stuff, I think we've constantly tried to take the steps, just like Kathleen said, the report it and that type of stuff. We've constantly tried to take steps to eliminate these issues. But up here on the tribal side, we do run it through our auditor, but I think we have a weakness on the casino side. I think that when you get these reported, it needs to go to a exterior auditor, investigator. I think that you have people working for that business down there that maybe have some bias. I don't know, but you see that the majority of the repeat type reporters are coming from the casinos, and they're investigated. You get a report on each one, but I don't know. Right now, I think the checks and balances on who investigates it needs to be an external person, and they're totally unbiased, you know, so. But we gotta always work towards being fair and honest and openly communicating with all of our employees. You know, we don't have as many employees. When I first got on council, you know, we had like 1,500 employees down there and almost 400 up here. Now we're down to probably about 1,500 total. I think, you know, the more we develop an open and line of communication and a protocol to you go this step, this, until you reach the top, and then it's time for us, not us, but the outside party to come in and really figure out what's going on. You know, we can't have our tribal members and we can't have our community members being discriminated against.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to all the candidates. Angie, you got a question?